One thing I've learned from Bob is when he got his cast off, he was in a habit, in a pattern of walking on one leg and dragging the other. And I was noticing that, and he was favoring, that his hurt paw and wasn't walking on it at all. And I thought, he's got into a rut like some of us do. And what's going to break him out of the rut? Because he's in this habit. And so I get the pointer out, the little laser pointer, which he loved, he used to love. And I shot it across the room, and something in him just woke up. Bang! Whoa, what was that? And he forgot that he couldn't move his paw. So where's the wisdom there? The wisdom is that Bob forgot what he had learned just recently. He forgot it. Perhaps wisdom is a lot about unlearning things and forgetting things that have limited us and held us back, like Bob. Perhaps when we are not thinking, but simply being, something magical happens. And I also noticed when I heard the news about Nikaya, when I read it in the newsletter, and I was shocked. Something very visceral hit. It's like, this can't happen. What is this? How can she be gone? We were just. And then the Cat's Cradle song comes up about we don't have time. We don't make the time. And thinking about all of that this morning, it's like, it reminds me, and here's the wisdom again, it reminds me is that we don't have time to be engaged in our limited focus. That we focus in on the dishes and trips and this and that, and we forget about what's immediate and right in front of us. The little boy that wants to dig in the yard. It's Max coming up and saying, hey, you want to play, Mom? No, I'm doing dishes. But then the wisdom comes in, maybe I need to take that time. Maybe it's not just for them, but it's for me also, because I can gain something from it. When I work on these talks, I can think that it's about giving this message to you all, but no, I get the message. I have to live the message. I have to be the message. And so for me, the wisdom here is the embodiment of what I'm trying to impart. Wisdom is not knowledge, although wisdom comes from knowledge. Because I know a lot of really smart, knowledgeable people. They call them professors, and they can be dumb as a post. They can be very insensitive and socially very inept and not seeing the big picture. I was on this board. I was invited to be, and there was, some high-powered people on it. Who am I to be on this board? But they wanted my expertise in facilities and things like that. So I'm on the board. I was there for 3 or 4 years, and somebody new came on the board, and they introduced me, and, oh, this is Christopher. He's very wise. What? What? And I started to think about it, and I went, of course, I would appear wise. I don't say anything. And when I do, it comes from a place of this is really important to me. Something is arising right now. It needs to be spoken. What if we were to live our lives like that? As the Quakers do in so many ways in their meetings, they sit in silence until somebody is actually moved. not from the head, but full-bodied. And they speak from that place, and there's a quality in that speaking when it comes not from the head, but from the full-bodied experience. And so wisdom is not a head thing, it's a full body thing. You can feel when someone's speaking and there's a ka-chunk, there's a connection. You know, they know what they're talking about because they've lived it. They've walked that path. And speaking of walking the paths, there's this magnet on my refrigerator. And it says, it's not the path you find, it's the trail you blaze. It's not the path you find, it's the trail you blaze. Are we following someone else's path? Are we following the path of the crowd? Or are we actually discovering who and what we are? Not what we've been told, but what we actually are. What we know in our, when we know in our just our whole body. My son came back from Japan over 20 years ago. He was studying Buddhism, wanted to be wise. He was a college kid at the time, and he came back very disenchanted. He saw how the sausage was made. He saw under the skirt and said, "Nope, Dad, it's not for me." I said, "Good." But he did bring back a little quote from Basho, who was a haiku master in Japan's 16th century. And it says, "Do not follow in the footsteps of the master, but seek what the master sought." That's wisdom. It was one of the best gifts he's ever given me. Do not follow in the footsteps of the master, whatever that master may be for you. It's basically finding your own voice. Look what they sought that made them become that skilled and that masterful. What was that they were looking for? But don't parrot and mimic them. Find what's true for yourself. There's your wisdom. What's true for you? And you'll know it because there'll be a resonance. Something in the body will go, "Oh, yeah, I get that." As Kathy wrote that quote, read the quote, we're all independent researchers, trying to figure out, the mystery of life. We're independent. You will find that for yourself. Someone can't tell you that. Someone can't sing your song as Nakaya sang her song. As we have more and more experience, we tend to wield that experience in a more and more skillful way. And the song, The Gambler, is such an important song. Knowing when to hold them and when to fold them and when to walk away and when to run. This is some real wisdom here. You never count your money when you're at the table. Do it somewhere else, So this is the wisdom that we learn from experience through good judgment. But in order to really learn good judgment, we have to have bad judgment to discover what really works. What works? And that's so important. And so I'm going to say that that wisdom is, shall we say, is knowledge and experience used very skillfully. And that skillfulness is derived from direct participation dumb luck, lots of mistakes, failures, but really having a keen interest in knowing what is real. And out of that comes wisdom, that whole package of really wrestling with it and getting dirty with it. The Dalai Lama was asked, "Are you enlightened?" And in his infinite wisdom, he said, "Oh, no, 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 no. I'm not enlightened. No, 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 no." Which tells me acres about him. Because if someone says they're enlightened, they're not. Who is there to be enlightened? When someone wakes up, they see the whole picture. They see they're not separate from it all. Who's going to be enlightened? There's nobody home. So the Dalai Lama expressed wisdom by not setting himself apart, expressing humility, and denying it right there. He's a master. He's very awake. He's a beautiful soul. He exudes love, but yet he denies it, which makes him a master. Socrates says, true wisdom comes to each of us when we realize how little we understand about life, ourselves, and the world. That resonates because how can we be wise when we know it all? If I've already made up my mind, if I know it all, like some people do in religions, what room is there for newness, for growth, for freshness, for adaptability? My mind's made up. Okay, I know how it all works. Really? That tells me you haven't looked very closely and you haven't looked very deeply. And every hour of the day, someone discovers something new about the world, something magical and mind-blowing. 30 years ago, we had no idea how fantastic mushrooms were and how they have a secret life. And there's so much more. And octopuses, there's movies about these. So there's some keys. The first key is humility, is recognizing that I don't know the answer and I don't need to know the answer. Whatever, it's like preparing it's like preparing for anything. You can't prepare totally for all of it, but you can become relaxed and step into the arena, not knowing, but trusting that you will find your way through. Of course, you'll prepare if you're going to be skydiving. You're going to prepare a little bit, but you can't prepare for the landing. Every landing will be different. Different velocity, speed, angle, terrain you're landing on. But you can get the general sense of it. So humility is something about not knowing and not needing to know. It's just relaxing and trusting. This is how we can develop wisdom. Learning from our mistakes. Every time I put my foot in my mouth, I taste the shoe. And I learned that it's not a very tasty shoe, and I've tasted it a lot. And I tell jokes that don't land, and I learn not to tell that joke again. So another part of wisdom is knowing when to speak and not to when not to speak, and be appropriate for the crowd. And lastly, I think one of the wisdom keys is having a high tolerance for uncertainty. And that gets back to not knowing and not needing to know, but being able to be in the paradox, and to be able to see through illusion and to not need to fix it. It's just sort of just to let life flow. And that's kind of the basis of the Tao and the term Wu Wei, which is being natural, being in the flow, being in the zone. And so, how do we be in the zone if we have a clenched fist? When we open our hand and we simply allow life to move as it does, something relaxes and we go with the flow. It's kind of like the canoe down the stream. If we turn around and try to go upstream, that's not in the flow. You can do it. And boy, we have tried. But to be in the way, in the Tao, which means the way, how do you you carve wood in the direction of the grain. You build a fire not in the wind, but in the shelter. There's certain things that are just obvious that we do. My friend Isaac said, all suffering is not wanting to have the experience you're having right now. All suffering. My suffering is not wanting to have the experience that I'm having right now. It's raining. I'm cold. I don't like it. Okay. But it's what's happening right now. Every time I fight with reality, I lose. Wisdom tells me that why don't I choose what's happening right now? What if I were just to say, hey, I want the experience I'm having right now? So, last story here. We've got the wise panda and the cat, and they're on a pilgrimage, and they're going to the sacred tree in the forest. It's 3 days walk, and this is the tree of wisdom. So we're on the journey, and the cat he's anxious. He really wants to get there. The panda is just ho-hum, just moving along, just grooving with life. And the second day, it's raining and they're on the slippery mountain way up high and it's windy. The cat's not feeling it at all. He's having a tough time. And he turns to the panda looking for diversion or something and says, hey, panda, if I were to give you 3 wishes, what would they be? And the panda, in the panda's wisdom, stopped and thought about it. Just didn't give a quick answer, but actually pondered it and said, I'll tell you what, the first wish would be to be on this mountain. The second wish would be to be on this mountain in this rainstorm and the wind. And the third wish would be to be on this mountain in the rain and the wind with you. And the cat said, what? You got to be kidding. I don't want to be here. And the panda said, but you are. You can fight with it to your peril, or you could become wise and just accept and to choose what you have right now. In this moment, choose it all. And what happens to your suffering if you actually choose that? If you can explore what's going to happen now, because it's all going to change in a day. We'll be somewhere totally different and we'll be maybe even missing this experience, or we'd be looking back at it and laughing. So why not enjoy it and explore it now? The cat said, okay. Still wasn't feeling it. It has to go ka-chunk. And kind of in closing, wisdom is something that we know, it's natural, it's out there, but it's not of the mind, it's of the full body. And so, as the panda did, he looked, he stopped. And so when it's time to be wise, do we stop and just simply look and feel as opposed to think. Let us pray. As we take a breath together, in gratitude for all that has been given, the gift of this body, of our time together, the words that have been spoken, the emotions that have moved, the songs that have been sung. We give thanks for all of it, exactly as it is. And as we open in acceptance to that which is given, actually, we give room for more to be given of the same. And so we go forth this day in a state of open receptivity, a state of not knowing, but in full acceptance of what is to be offered and what is to be given. For this, we are grateful, as we simply release this prayer by saying, and so it is. Amen.